Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tosh Customs, and today we'll be looking at my Red Lantern Mcfarlane Batman. I realize that this guy is probably not what you'd be expecting out of a Red Lantern Batman, as there have been other artists who have designed the character before, or similar iterations or concepts of the character, but I wanted to put a very, very interesting spin on it. And obviously, this is coming from the mind of the customer first, and I am just here to bring it to life in a lot of ways. And so, the customer, when they reached out to me, they said that they wanted a Red Lantern Batman, but specifically they wanted to have a Jace Fox Batman. And so when we were talking about the commission, we were really discussing this guy's origin. And so we came to the place where we decided that Batman has died, or Batman has been killed. And so now it is up to Jace to take on the mantle of Batman. Where the other, where Nightwing and the other Robins are, we don't know, but it's up to Jace now to take on the mantle of Batman. And in the process, on one of his early nights, he loses control and kills a criminal. And in that moment of rage, Atrocitus approaches him and offers him a Red Lantern ring, and Jace accepts. And so now he's not only the Dark Knight, but he is the Rage Knight as well. And I definitely took some medieval inspiration with this character, trying to keep a very clear bat motif. And something I really wanted to do was make the suit feel very organic. I really like Atrocitus's sort of rock-like armor, where it doesn't feel very sleek or metallic, but it has a very hard, cold stone look to it. And so I was thinking about, if all these suits are unique and these characters are sort of projecting this lantern suit over them, what would Jace Fox's suit look like? And how would it, translate around Batman, or around fear, or, around now his newfound rage? And so as we take a closer look at this guy, we'll first take a look at the accessories and then back to the figure itself. And so there are a couple accessories that aren't on this guy and that I've had set off to the side because, as this is a Mcfarlane figure, it is a little bit taller than what I'd normally have for my setup. And so I had to adjust my camera angle, as well as the fact that I wouldn't be able to keep the accessories in frame. So talking about the accessories, let's look at the head that was on Fox first. Ignore the paint on my finger, sorry. But we have his masked Red Lantern helmet. And I wanted something that, once again, felt very organic, but also felt very, very fitting of Batman as well. Let's see if my focus get even in a little bit better there. So as you can see, so this is something I 3D modeled and sculpted myself. You'll see all these little pock marks and details inside the sculpt, and that was all hand textured by me, or I guess 3D textured in the model. And so you can see that there's sort of multiple of like these bat ears idea coming up off the top of the head. He also has some little sort of like side of the jaw spikes, horns that he has going on here. And you can see this sort of tendon look reaching around the mask, once again, feeling very, very organic as well. And then up on the front here, I wanted to sort of make it feel like the bat wings, but not make it a direct bat symbol. And so you have sort of that arch up and down of those bat wings along the visor of the front plate right there. So that's the first head. Now, the second head we have, the customer wanted an unmasked head. And so then my challenge was, okay, how does the masked head come apart? And so we had this very sort of bio-organic, techno-organic look. And so I had the idea that the mask just splits off to the sides here. So it will it'll slide down, and you can see it bunches up right there under the beard, and then it pulls off to the sides as well to reveal this much older, grittier, tired Jace Fox. He's much more jaded by life now that he's become a Red Lantern. And so I wanted to give him this sort of unimpressed smirk there, as well as sort of the bags under his eyes. He's not the young, spry, aspiring Batman anymore, but he's seen, he's been in war now as a Red Lantern. I also have some sort of like little wiring details around the face. Once again, that bioorganic, as sort of the mask, it has its little, inputs or, ties to his actual person. And so you can see that that one up there does look like the little bat ears and the bat wings coming up to the top of the mask. And then there's just some other finer details along the sides of the cheeks there. But I think this expression turned out really well. It took me a long time to get this good skin color and texture as well. I had to experiment a lot with different paint combos. But the rest of the helmet is the same. So you have more of this nice deep metallic red, as well as some silver dry brushing to show off some weathering along the sculpt. So very similar paint process, except for the face up front there. Another accessory we have is, once again, he's the Rage Knight now. And so we have this really, really nice metallic weathered red sword. I wanted his projections as well as his suit to feel like hard light. And so I didn't, red lanterns or green lanterns or yellow lanterns, orange lanterns, all their weapons are shown to be sort of clear, to be translucent. One, I don't have any translucent resin, so I wouldn't have been able to mimic that effect. But I was also thinking about the fact that, these things need to feel like they have impact and weight. I feel like that's always a strange thing about clear weapons, is that they don't feel like they hold any force behind them. And so for this guy's suit, as well as all the design, I went for this glossy metallic red, so that it still has that sort of light bending, light shifting property, but at the same time, it has still a very hard, solid appearance. And so we have this red sword that has been dry brushed in some chrome silver, as you can see. This sword is from Azrael from the Arkham Knight games, and it has simply been repainted. So I gave it a full black coat. I painted everything black, and then I dry brushed everything silver. Then I sprayed it with a clear red, a trans red, and then after that dry brushed it again with silver to get that nice weathering. And so you can definitely see some deeper black pitting in there. You can definitely appreciate the layers within the paint job there. So we have the sword, and last but not least, I gave him this charred skeletal ribcage. This comes from the Toy Biz Holocaust figure, and it was something that I got in a lot of figures a while back, and it's just been sitting. I like cut it out of the Holocaust frame, and then it's just been sitting in my drawer, and I was like, it would be really interesting if Red Lantern, because they have that red rage sort of vomit spit that comes out of their mouth. They blast it on people. And so I was like, what if it just burned someone away? And so you have this black and sort of brown purple color. And I was really thinking, I was trying to figure out what burnt flesh looked like and the best way to sort of do that charred skeleton. And purple is a good way to complement black, because if you paint everything black, you can't appreciate the finer details. But then if you painted a black gray, it starts looking more metal and more like a hard surface. And so instead I go for the purple in this design, because it's essentially just like a darker, deeper tinged variant of red. Essentially when it comes down to it, you mix the purple with the blue, and blue, you can darken blue into black, or you can darken red into black. And so a really, really deep purple turns out to be a good way to dry brush in order to get those details out. And so we have this glossy black, we have this dry brushed, more matte purple, and then as you can see, I also dropped little bits of orange all over the sculpt there to get sort of this singed and still crackling burning effect. And I think it turned out really, really well. I'm very happy with it, and the figure can just hold this in his hand. So pretty happy with how that turned out. So that covers the accessories. Not a ton, but the real work went into the body of this guy. Sorry, just knocked my camera. So let me put the head back on here. Let me move these other accessories out of the way for now. And let's talk about the body of this figure, because that, honestly, in my mind, is the star of the show. He's a massive figure. and he gets extra height and extra volume due to the size of his cape, as well as just the overall size of the figure. And so, talking about base bodies, what did I use here? So, this is based off of the Raven Spawn figure from Mcfarlane. And so, if you're familiar with the Spawn figures, they are taller than your average DC Mcfarlane figure. So, for reference, here we have the Jace Fox Batman figure right here. If I can get him to stand properly. Realize his toe was sort of bent out of whack there. He still doesn't want to stand. His cape's heavy. That is, come on. Come on, man. Stand for me, please. All right, he doesn't want to stand too much, so I'm just going to hold my hand, I'm just going to hold his toes down. But as you can see, Spawn Batman, not even like locking his legs, his knees are a little bit bent here, still stands like easily ahead over the standard Jace Batman. And so you might be going, okay, well, if this is supposed to be Jace and this is supposed to be Jace's scale, at least the future state scale, why did I upscale this guy? I upscaled it for a couple reasons. One, the Raven Spawn sculpt had a very organic look and a very sinister look. And then two, Batman still represents fear, to put fear in the hearts of his enemies, as well as rage. And so if I decided that if I'm going for this, organic feeling suit, and we're saying that, the user is using the ring to project a new form, a new suit over them, why not make it as imposing as possible? And so Jace has this, essentially larger than life suit on him that he's wielding, and he's got this really, really big, wide cape, also all on wires. And so he's just supposed to be this incredibly chunky warlord type character. So let's talk about the finer details now. So that was sort of the concept I was walking in with this. And so in terms of how did I transform this guy, the Raven Spawn figure has a number of spikes all over his suit. He has these shoulder pads that I ended up removing. And then in the removing process, I sanded down the peg that used to be here. It's like this big plastic block that connects to the shoulder pad. So I sanded that all down and then fully resculpted the bicep with that same muscular texture. And honestly, you won't even be able to tell that it existed. But it did take a lot of time. I had to sand it down completely smooth and then resculpt everything to match the musculature. Same thing on the other arm. And then he also had a bunch of spikes. He has a bunch of spiny things all over the lower legs, as well as the forearm armor. And so I sanded all that down and then resculpted everything. So these gauntlets are completely resculpted, and you can see there's some nice tiered armor here. And the whole suit has this musculature or sort of like bone texture to it. And so I sculpted all that in. And so I had 3 or 4 different line carving tools so that I could get the larger, thinner, and finer different lines running through the bits of armor there. And then likewise on the side here, you can see that I actually sculpted sort of this bat wing look into the side of the legs where the original spines used to be. On top of that, the knee pads here, they were skulls and they were just sort of plain skulls. So I sculpted some bat wings into the knee pads. Up here on the chest, obviously, there's this giant honkin' bat symbol on the front there. And that has all been custom sculpted by me, as well as the Red Lantern symbol. And then also at the waist here, we have these new bat wings that run along the edge of the waist, some added muscle fibers along the sides of the legs there, as well as horns that are sort of sitting in this angry skull at the center there. So a ton of resculpting on top of everything. This is honestly probably one of the more belaboring figures I've worked on recently because it was modeling 2 new heads, learning the Mcfarlane engineering. So I had to take this guy apart, put him together a couple times to really get comfortable with it. And then after that, it was a matter of sanding all the joints to make sure they were prepped, and then sanding all the armor, and then resculpting everything on top of that. I think this guy probably took me on the closer end of like 15 to 20 hours maybe. I don't usually keep time of my work, but I would say overall a very, very, very labor intensive figure. But I'm very happy with how he turned out. This cape is a Spawn cape that I got off of eBay. It's really nice. It has wires all the way through it, and then as well as these top collar pieces have wires in it too, and so you can go for some very, very dynamic looks. Obviously, it's not the bright red that Spawn normally has. I actually sprayed most of it this smoky black color that sort of ombres and fades out to more of a bright red, like that Red Lantern. And so originally I was actually thinking about 3D modeling some shoulder pads for him. And then I realized Batman's whole thing is being a bat, having this big cape that makes him look like a giant bat flying through Gotham, or maybe in this case, flying over alien planets and through space. And so with that, I realized that he needs a cape. So I ended up getting the Spawn cape and then repainting it both on the outside and on the inside. You'll see a very similar shadowy, smoky ombre on the inside of the cape as well. And then in terms of other things on the suit, on his right middle finger, I did sculpt a red ring. And then on the left side here, I took this big blade and I fused it into the left forearm gauntlet. Because once again, he's organic. I wanted to give him sort of like integrated weaponry into the hands, and I felt like this blade is an interesting play on the normal fins of Batman. You know, they normally have fins on their gauntlets. What if he turned one of those fins into a giant blade instead? And then likewise on the other side with his ring and everything else, I stuck with the 2 fins. I was debating between 2 and 3 fins, but once again, referencing this future state Batman, he has 2 fins on his gauntlets versus the traditional Batman 3. And so since this is Jace, I also gave him 2 fins in order to indicate sort of that change of character or change of mantle right there. And so he's got 2 nice little fins right there. The back is also fully painted. You can see that the bat wings run all the way back, and then this armor here is also painted. So the details run all the way around. I didn't skimp because he was going to have a cape on, and this cape is just glued up top. Something else I forgot to mention in terms of sculpt. Oops, I dropped the head there. The neck is completely resculpted too. So all this musculature here, it is actually dry brushed with a little bit of blue to bring out some contrast. And obviously, you know, the camera probably won't pick it up, but in hand, there is a slight tinge of blue in all the sort of black suited areas to bring out some of the extra details. But the original Raven Spawn sort of has this plastic cloak that covers part of the shoulders as well as the neck. And so I removed that and then had to fill in all the neck volume that was gone because of that plastic piece. And so the neck is also fully resculpted. And so definitely a lot of love, definitely a lot of tender loving care has gone into this guy. And I think he's well worth it. He has just an incredibly imposing presence on the shelf, and it's been a real pleasure to make this guy. So slotting sorry, it's a little bit weird to do it from behind the camera, trying to slot accessories into a hand, but there we go. Slotting it in here. One of my favorite poses is to have him pointing the sword, something like that, challenging someone to a duel. He's about to go to war. Then also I like lifting his hand up here and then slotting little charred skeleton there into his hand. And I think that is a super, super imposing look for this guy. Bend that knee there. There we go. I really, really like that right there. That maybe I can get that just to be the thumbnail, and then sort of bending the cape around and taking advantage of all those wires to create a very, 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 very dynamic pose for this guy. I really, really like this. So I think that brings me essentially to the conclusion of this video. You know, I think the big sort of takeaway for me here was one, learning how the Mcfarlane figure works in terms of its engineering. And then most of it really came down to traditional sculpting. Especially working with a lot of Mezco figures, there's a lot less hand sculpting compared to working with full plastic figures. And so coming back to this was both very laborious, but also definitely felt like I was returning home back to sort of those Marvel Legends custom roots and things like that. So we have him here with his alternate head sculpt, and I think that also looks great. I love the bat horns or the bat ears on the helmets there. So if you guys have enjoyed this video or you liked this figure, please comment or please like the video and subscribe. I appreciate all the support you guys give me. And also, if you want to, see the work in progress photos of this guy, how he's sort of come along and evolved and grown into the figure it is now, or if you just want to see any of the other projects I'm currently working on, please go check out my Instagram. My username is Tosh_customs. My name is also in the description of this video so that you can find me. I appreciate, once again, all your support, and it's a good way also to know when I'm reopening commissions, because this guy right here was a commission. And so good way just to stay up to date on all my comings and goings in the community. So with that, thank you all for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I will catch you later. Take care.